Hey, if you'd like to earn CEUs for this webinar, join the Safeopedia community at the link in the description below. Now on to the show.
All right, well, welcome everybody to today's webinar. We'll give everybody just a few seconds here to get in and get settled. Thank you so much for joining us today. Whether you're joining from across the globe or you're right next door, we're honored you're spending your time with us today. My name's Scott Cuthbert from Safeopedia, and our mission is to support and uplift safety leaders with the knowledge, resources, and community they need to make the workplaces safer. Before we get into the webinar, just want to say thank you. Your work often happens behind the scenes, but the impact you have on our families, communities, and organizations is profound. Thank you for everything you do to keep people safe. At the bottom of the screen under the three dots, you'll see the Q&A section. So please use this to submit your questions throughout the webinar, and we'll definitely do our best at the end of the presentation to get to as many questions as we can. So today, the webinar is on OSHA Heat NEP, runs through 2031. So we're going to cover 5 steps to construction programs that are ready for inspection. So the webinar has been made possible today with the support of Ergodyne, a preferred manufacturer member of the AD Safety Network and longtime supporter of Safeopedia. So we're honored to have them joining us today. And our presenter is Madison Moore. She's product trainer for Ergodyne, and she'll be walking us through a practical framework for building a heat stress program that holds up to inspections and actually protects workers in the field. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce Madison. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, hello, everybody. Like you said, my name is Madison. I'm a product trainer over here at Ergodyne. Before we get started, I just want to do a little poll for everybody. Some webinars you don't really have to interact too much. Today, we're mixing it up. We're going to interact. So if you could just take the next 30 seconds to a minute here and answer these 4 poll questions for me. These questions have to do, you can think about whether you were working in the field, what your people are doing in the field, but go ahead, take a few minutes and just answer these questions for me on your heat stress impacts. We'll give it about 15 more seconds. Go ahead and take that if you haven't already for me. All right, give it 5 more seconds. 4, 3, 2, and 1. Thank you, everybody that participated in that. I am going to share the results just so everybody can kind of see what the group as a whole said. So these questions really have to do with how does heat interact with your everyday choices, about hydration, and we'll talk more about that when we go through our training today. And then obviously one of the questions was, can you get heat stress while working indoors? The answer is always yes. Heat stress affects everybody a little bit differently. So being able to kind of understand that before we go into the training is really just a good way to see where everybody stands on this issue. So let's get started. So just to kind of put yourself in perspective here when it comes to heat stress, 2024 still holds the record for the hottest year in the history. So with 2023 and 2025 tying for second place when it comes to the temperature outside. We continue to see a rise in temperatures, and this summer is predicted to be just as hot as the last 3 years. So you can see that this is not going away. We're not getting cooler. It wasn't a fluke. Heat stress is really here to stay. The U.S. reported 103 workplace deaths due to high heat. Since most of these occur in the summer, that's well over a death a week. Even more alarming is this number is grossly underestimated. So heat stress and heat illness interferes with our cognitive ability. So people make more mistakes due to the high heat. That number is not going to go down as heat-related illnesses, and it's not getting tracked as heat-related illnesses. Because if you get run over by a vehicle or you crash it or you have a heart attack, those are usually caused by the heat, but they're not being documented as by the heat. So when it comes to that number, it actually is pretty high compared to what is written down. OSHA reports that a single incident of overheating related to extreme weather conditions can cost an employer around $79,081. This includes both direct and indirect costs. So direct being workers' compensation, medical treatments, hospitalizations, and indirect being missed work days and decreases in productivity due to the heat. So where does these standards come into play when it comes to heat stress? As things stand today, OSHA requires when it comes to heat stress, the answer is it really just depends. It depends on whether you live in a state under a federal OSHA jurisdiction or a state plan that has been gone statewide. Currently, there is not a specific heat stress regulation that exists at a federal level. But with 2025 and now into 2026, there is the NEP program going into place as a standard that they are testing out. We'll talk more about that in a few slides. And then currently only 7 states have actually adopted occupational heat safety standards. These states include California, Colorado, Maryland, Minnesota, Nevada, Oregon, and Washington. Although these standards have taken the form of regulations instead of statutes. As far as state plans go, if you don't know what is going on in your state, I recommend that you look it up to see if your state does have some sort of heat stress management plan in place. For example, Minnesota, where I work, has a state plan that covers private and state local government workplaces. Some states have plans that only cover state and local government workers. And then some states have nothing, so therefore they would be following a federal OSHA general duty clause, which basically says employers have to protect their workers from risks. For example, California's heat stress standard has laid down the framework for OSHA's Water, Rest, Shade campaign. These components of this long-running campaign are obvious. It's water, rest, and shade. But this was really the first move towards recognizing the importance of awareness and training, and then being able to access water, acclimatize to your environment, and other solutions. So really what we are going to be focusing on is the emphasis on awareness and training, the importance of clean, cool water being readily available and in close proximity to where you're working, the need for shade, especially break areas that are shaded, the importance of acclimatization, and then having a clearly defined and documented process for monitoring weather conditions and managing high heat days. So as I mentioned, activity towards a heat stress standard, this really kicked off when OSHA launched their National Emphasis Program. This launched in April of 2022. It was focused on industries that have high heat incidence and fatality rates. It was actually supposed to be expired in April of 2026. 5 days after it expired, they renewed it, and the new expiration date is April 9th of 2031. They did add some updates to that, nothing crazy. We're still following majority of the plan. They've taken away some industries, added some industries, but really where it comes into play is construction is still being a targeted industry for the National Emphasis Program. So the NEP greenlights OSHA to conduct heat-related inspections on high-risk work sites. It encourages protective measures such as training, acclimatizing workers, access to water, rest, and shade, like we just talked about. The biggest takeaway from this updated National Emphasis Program, they just announced, seems to be a shift from awareness and data collection to really the enforcement side of it. It really formalizes the how and when for inspectors in a way that provides a possible preview of what a federal heat standard might eventually look like. So if you were aware of what the NEP program was today or before, that kind of gives you an idea of what it is today. And if you weren't aware of what it was before the National Emphasis Program, when it came to OSHA heat-related inspections between 2018 and 2021, there was about 700 OSHA-related inspections due to heat. After the NEP program went into place, that number jumped up past 7,000. So you can see where they're really focusing on that enforcement piece. So again, 2024 was a monumental year as far as progress goes towards that federal standard. Not an OSHA standard, but ASSP published a standard for heat stress management in the construction and demolition operations. The A10 is a set of standards that are specific to construction and demolition. And this it's a voluntary standard, however, it's recognized and referenced as a best practice when it comes to OSHA. So if they say you need to have this, it's usually coming from this standard. Here at Ergodyne, we offer a lot of different plans and solutions, and we'll go through those a little bit later at the end of the presentations to kind of help you understand what you should be putting into place on your work site. So OSHA published that heat stress standard in late 2024. Just to kind of point out some of the things that they put in here, you can see that water rest shade has that tent, fans, cooling PPE, all things that we offer here at Ergodyne, but all things that keep your workers cool while they're on the job site. It also mentions hydration and electrolytes in here. As you kind of saw through that survey, sometimes people don't like drinking water. They don't like how it tastes. Adding some of those electrolytes gets people to drink while also helping their body rehydrate. Just to give you another little stat here before we go through our 5 key points, according to the Occupational Health and Safety, the risk of heat stress could cut 2.2% of global working hours, which is the equivalent to the output of 80 million full-time jobs. This would be felt worldwide economically, so the time to act when it comes to heat stress is now. So more than anything, OSHA wants to see that employers are making a good faith effort to protect their workers. Ultimately, an employer doesn't need to follow a federal rule to know that simple, proven solutions like water, rest, and shade can save lives. There are 5 main messages that OSHA has been prescribing in recent years. These will not change. Getting workers trained on basic awareness. Do they understand what heat stress looks like? The symptoms to look out for, how to treat it when it happens. Emphasis on monitoring your workplace conditions. So often we think of conditions as being the temperatures outside, but if you're working indoors, that temperature matters too. The temperature reading that you're seeing on your phone is not necessarily the temperature rating of where you're working at that moment. So understanding those really goes into having a good understanding of getting a plan in place. Getting a heat hazard assessment done to identify trouble areas that could exacerbate or make heat stress worse or happen quicker. Implementing heat illness prevention strategies, like where Ergodyne comes in with that. And then lastly, having a plan in place for medical emergencies. So we're going to kind of take these one by one and just walk through them quickly. So step 1, training. Training and educating workers on what to look for personally as well as in others for signs of heat stress and heat-related illnesses. What are the signs to look for? What are their symptoms? If they do occur, what do we do, right? The biggest things to prevent heat stress is to understand how to see the issues and treat them when they happen. Step 2 of a good program is monitoring. So both weather and workplace conditions to gauge heat hazard potentials. So often we talk about heat stress in an outdoor context, but there are many industries that work indoors without climate control and heat stress in a year-round habit. During an inspection, there will be questions about how an employer monitors the environment. Are they using the heat index? The OSHA heat safety app features real-time heat index and hourly forecasts specific to your location, as well as occupational safety and health recommendations from OSHA and NEOSH. Another tool of measurement is specifically referenced in that A10 standard that I was talking to you guys about, as well as OSHA's proposed standard, which is to utilize a wet bulb globe. This tool, it takes a way of measuring humidity, radiant sun, wind speed, as well as actual ambient temperature, so that we know what the true temperature that we're working on is. 80 degrees in Arizona compared to Florida is completely different. Same with here in Minnesota. And then step 3 is conducting a heat hazard assessment. So identifying those things that are present on a job site that could exacerbate the heat. Awareness of this unique complexity on your job sites and environments is how one effectively conducts an assessment on your work site. So in this, you'll see a mention of the wet bulb that we just talked about. You will want to familiarize yourself with this measurement and put written policies into place on how to manage your work schedule as temperatures change. If you look in the OSHA heat stress plan, it gives direct guidance on how to conduct a site survey in both indoor and outdoor environments. I also have something at the end as a resource that you'll all be able to use on how to set up a plan accordingly. And then number 4 is implementing heat illness prevention strategies. So putting things in place like reducing worker exposure to heat stress conditions, establishing an acclimatization program to help workers adapt to working in the heat, ensuring workers are provided adequate water, rest, and shade periods, monitoring workers for early signs and symptoms of the heat stress, and then again, going back to PPE and prevention strategies to help. And then lastly, step 5 for heat stress prevention is planning. So the key to preventing injuries or worse, fatalities is planning. Be aware of the risks, monitor the weather, monitor your workers, have tailgate talks often, especially in summer months, and then constantly remind them the importance of taking care of themselves, especially during extreme heat. When workers come in and they've had alcohol or even that caffeine of the day to keep them going, that's dehydrating them. Smoking dehydrates them. You want to throw out the energy drinks. You want to put in some of those electrolytes to help you. And then make sure that everyone is taking their breaks, okay? It can be really easy to power through and think that you're above it. You're not above it. Everyone can get heat stress. The old school idea of let's pound through our breaks and lunch and knock this job out so we can go home early, it's not going to help when it comes to heat stress. You need to take more breaks, not less. In fact, lengthen the breaks. Take those breaks in a shaded, temperature-controlled area if you have it, but let's be honest, that's not going to happen on every job site. And then encourage lots and lots of water, more than you think. By the time you're thirsty, you're already dehydrated. So you should be drinking constantly so that you never feel that thirsty feeling. And then set up a buddy system where workers are responsible for themselves and their coworkers. They're helping keep an eye on each other. We'll go through some of the early warning signs of heat stress and heat stroke specifically. And you'll see in there that if someone isn't recognizing it in themselves, hopefully their buddy will be able to recognize it for them. So again, how heat stress happens. The body wants to thermally regulate to that 98.6. That's the way our body is. Once it starts to go above that and we reach that 99.7, that's when heat stress has actually begun to affect our body. Even worse, if our body reaches that 104-degree temperature, that's where severe illness can occur. If you let your body reach that temperature and leave it at about 30 minutes, that can cause cellular damage to your brain. This is heat stroke. It's a medical emergency. People die from it. So it's really important that we are catching it before it gets to this part. So let's look at some of these signs and symptoms and how we treat them. So heat rash, first off, it's the first thing that our body starts to do when we're experiencing a heat illness. Our bodies start to get itchy, blisters start to appear, our sweat glands are clogged, and we need to make sure we keep our skin dry and move to a cool rest spot and rehydrate. You'll hear me say that so many times. Hydration is the key. Once a heat rash occurs, the next thing that you might see are heat cramps. Our muscles start to tighten, they spasm because salt and moisture levels are depleted, hydration. Move to a cool area to rest, apply something cool to the body like a cooling towel or vest, and then rehydrate. All right, now we get to where it's getting really severe and we're getting into that dangerous medical territory, which is heat exhaustion. With extended time in the heat and poor hydration, next comes heat exhaustion. Dizziness, starting to feel sick, are signs that we need to act fast because we can very quickly advance into heat stroke. You need to get that person into a cool spot to rest. Drink lots of fluids and make sure to monitor them. This is where that buddy system comes into place, having someone with them. If it gets worse and we are getting into heat stroke territory, this qualifies as a medical emergency and we have to act fast. Like I just said before, 30 minutes in this zone causes permanent brain damage, cellular damage, even death. If you are suspecting heat stroke, call a paramedic immediately and cool that person down in whatever way possible. Having an emergency zone for something like this is really important. Cooler of ice water, douse it over them. You can cool them as fast as possible. Sometimes there's the sentiment of toughen up, just work through it when it comes to heat stress. Some people even feel like it's embarrassing to ask for help or stop and take a rest. Would you rather feel a little embarrassed or have a medical incident? Because heat stress happens to everybody. It's a really important thing to recognize. And you can see in some of these signs and symptoms on the screen, you don't necessarily understand what's happening to you. The number one thing that you see in heat stroke is confusion. If you're experiencing that, you're not going to really understand what's happening. That buddy system being in place will really help that person get the care they need faster. So the fastest way to cool somebody down is in our wrist, our neck, our groin, our head, and then our underarms or our armpits. So if someone is experiencing a heat exhaustion, heat cramps, or heat stroke, getting them cooled, these are the fastest places for that. We already talked a little bit about how everybody cools themselves or feels heat a little bit differently. These are just some of our personal factors that go into heat stress. So everybody acclimatizes a little bit differently depending on our weight, age, fitness level, whether we have come in being dehydrated already or we haven't been replenishing our water enough. Whether we're feeling a little bit sick before we come into the job, and really it's what we had the night before affects how we do that day as well. And then our environment, obviously, and this is where those assessments come in so you can see, okay, I'm in that high temperature, I'm in directly in the sun, my humidity levels are higher or lower. We have wind today, we don't have wind today, or if I'm even working near hot equipment. All of these things go into how people are affected with the heat. So how do you prevent heat stress in your workplace? There's traditionally a hierarchy of controls that's been used as a means of determining how to implement feasible and effective controls. The idea behind this hierarchy is that the control methods at the top of the list are more effective and protective than those at the bottom. Elimination and substitution are at the top, And while most effective at reducing hazards, also tend to be the most difficult to implement. It's pretty hard to implement, get out of the weather or the sun, especially when that's where our job is at. But we're going to focus on these bottom three, as these are the most common controls used for combating heat stress and are generally used as a combination tool. So examples of heat stress engineering controls include having air conditioning, using fans to improve airflow if there is no airflow, using reflective shields to redirect the radiant heat from equipment away from workers, insulating water vapor pressure, sealing steam leaks if you're working out inside. Things like that are a part of engineering controls. When it comes to administration controls, that's where we can have our water breaks. So making sure that water is available close by to the job site, everyone's having those water breaks take effect. We can reduce physical demands of the job as much as possible. We can work at scheduling our jobs when there is a high heat exposure to cooler times of the day. Buddy systems are a part of admin controls. Taking frequent breaks, adjusting that work-rest schedule as the temperature starts to climb, and then training our employees to recognize the risks and symptoms. And then lastly, where we come in is that PPE portion. While it's the last line of defense in our hierarchy of controls, prevention, heat stress, PPE should be a part of your program solution. There are plenty of innovative and cost-effective solutions that can help combat the heat, including hard hats, inserts, cooling vests, hard hats that have integrated fans or brims that keep the sun out of them, sunscreen. Everyone kind of forgets about sunscreen when they're working. They think of it for vacations, but everyone should be wearing sunscreen all the time. So there are some of the main takeaways when it comes to how to prevent heat stress in your workplace. So now we're going to just move on and go pretty quickly through some of our catalog when it comes to product. So first up, as I said, sun protection and getting that sunscreen out there. The sun is recognized as a hazard by OSHA. We know how damaging the sun can be, and we have the numbers to prove it. 90% of cases of skin cancer were caused by sun exposure, and the annual cost of treating skin cancer in the US is over $8 billion. I would say sun protection in the US is still a little bit lagging behind in some other countries, but here sunscreen is regulated by the FDA. So having some type of sunscreen out there for us is a huge boost to helping prevent skin cancer. Just a little bit of our line here. We have our smaller lotions, bigger lotions, spray if you prefer a spray, and then a larger item as well. Just to take you through our cooling catalog, there are a lot of different cooling options out there depending on what you're looking for, but there is a little bit different here of like what you should be looking for your job site, and having a good understanding of what you might need to have for PPE is really important. So 2 questions to ask yourself. So what are my environmental factors and what are my uniform factors? So for our environmental factors, we want to know, what does our airflow levels look like? And our humidity levels look like? Do we have high humidity most of the time, low humidity? Because that's going to depend on what we want to use as a technology for our PPE. Same thing with uniform requirements. If I have to have something as a top layer, some PPE might not be the best thing for our job site. One tech fits all can result in substandard effectiveness. So we want to tailor it to our environment. So we'll start with some wet evaporative cooling. So wet evaporative is that PVA material, microfiber, polymers that are used to draw heat away from the body and help us sweat. If you are working in low or moderate humidity levels with sufficient airflow, this is a great tool for you to have on your job site. Just to give you some ideas of the different technologies that we have with this, we do headbands, hard hat inserts, vests, cooling towels, a little bit of everything for your companies. We also do our performance fabric with that terry cloth. So we make these in shirts, hard hats, inserts as well, cooling sweatbands, and some even in an FR cooling material. And then that PVA starts a little bit hard as a rock. You get a little bit wet, really nice cooling effect to it. This usually lasts about 1 to 2 hours before you have to reactivate, or is reactivated with sweat as well. Next up, we have our dry evaporative cooling. This is a really fun technology that you don't need a lot of water to activate with. All it takes is a bottle of water to pour into the back. What it does is it keeps your body cool because not everyone likes to be wet while they're working. And this one will keep you nice and dry as the water goes inside of the vest. With this one, it uses, again, evaporation, so it needs to be in those low humidity levels with sufficient airflow, and is really good way of cooling that body down if it's getting a little too hot. And then lastly, our last technology is our phase change cooling. So this vest does not matter where you're at or what type of uniform requirement you have. It does not need airflow for it. All you need to do to activate it is place it in an ice cooler full of ice water for about 15 minutes. Put it on your body and it'll last between 2 to 4 hours. This is really nice when you need those emergency situations to start cooling someone down quickly, or if you just want to throw it on while you're on a break. Just gives you some of the options out there. And then lastly, hydration, hydration, hydration. Keeping people on your job sites safe by keeping them hydrated. A lot of different options, whether you do reusable water bottles, hydration packs, or just having a cooler on site to keep some ice water in there. And then lastly, before we get to any questions, I just wanted to show you our OSHA compliant checklist that we just created. It is a 3-pager. I've kind of put it in a little bit smaller on the 1 page for you. But this checklist basically walks you through the NEP program and what OSHA is looking for a job site inspection. So having this and kind of checking the boxes off to see, okay, I have that. Oh, we don't do that. Maybe I need to add that to our program. If you have this on there, you have a better idea of what OSHA is looking for if they do a site visit. Other resources on our website, I will be sending this presentation to our Safeopedia folks. So hopefully they'll get that out there for you so that you have all the links and the presentation itself. Okay, I'm done talking. Any questions that I can answer for anybody?
Yeah, I think you were doing a very thorough job. We didn't have any questions pop up during the presentation, so we'll just ask quickly if anybody has any questions here. I wanted to mention maybe while people are thinking about their questions that that we do have a Safeopedia a community platform. It's free to join. So if people, and we do have conversations like this on a regular basis where you're able to connect with your peers and ask some questions. So I'm just going to drop that link in the chat there if anybody's interested in signing up for the community.
And then I do want to let everybody know too, here at Ergodyne, our regional sales team does do heat stress assessments. So if that's something that you're possibly interested in or want to see some more product that you could add in there, please reach out to your distributor partner and they'll be able to work with our reps to help get something set up for that.
Yeah, I know you guys are super helpful with on-site reviews, inspections, and I'm going to share your LinkedIn. We'll have as you mentioned, we'll record the session. We'll make it available on demand. We'll send out the PowerPoint presentation as well. Encourage folks to connect with you on LinkedIn if they have any questions that come to them after the fact, as well as we'll have your coordinates in the description for the on-demand version,
Perfect.
so people can track you down there. I think my link didn't didn't copy properly for the community, so I'm just going to add that back in there as well. All right, no questions. Wow, like I said, it was a very thorough presentation, so I think you answered a lot of the questions probably for people before before we got to the end here. So again, watch for your email. You'll be able to access the webinar on demand. Definitely share it with coworkers and peers. And thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you to Ergodine and Madison for imparting us with all of this knowledge. I hadn't realized it had been extended for 6 years. So
Yes.
that's definitely something to keep in mind.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much.